Good morning, everyone. It's an honor to be here and to share the stage with people like Anthony Atala and Susan Cain. In fact, this morning I think I want to take a page from Susan's book and be a little bit of an introvert, at least at first, for, say, the next 90 seconds or so. And that's because I want you to watch a short video for me and solve a mystery. It's a murder mystery, actually, a British whodunit. And I want you to sit back and relax and see if you can figure out who the killer is.
Clearly, somebody in this room murdered Lord Smythe, who, at precisely 3:34 this afternoon, was brutally bludgeoned to death with a blunt instrument. I want each of you to tell me your whereabouts at precisely the time that this dastardly deed took place.
I was polishing the brass in the master bedroom.
I was buttering his lordship's scones below stairs, sir.
Why, I was planting my petunias in the potting shed.
Constable, arrest Lady Smythe.
But how did you know?
Madam, as any horticulturist will tell you, one does not plant petunias until May is out. Take her away.
That's right, madam.
It's just a matter of observation. The real question is, how observant were you?
Action.
Clearly, somebody in this room murdered Lord Smythe, who, at precisely 3:34 this afternoon, was brutally bludgeoned to death with a blunt instrument. I want each of you to tell me your whereabouts at precisely the time that this dastardly deed took place.
I was polishing the brass in the master bedroom.
I was buttering his lordship's scones below stairs, sir.
Why, I was planting my petunias in the potting shed.
Constable, arrest Lady Smythe.
Okay, now I'm no longer an introvert. There you go. I'm back to my regular self. Let me ask a show of hands. How many of you saw all the changes? Anybody? How many of you saw no changes whatsoever? Most of the crowd? Same when I saw that, and that's what makes this video so effective. This was developed in London to get motorists to be aware of cyclists. And the power this video has is it shows us how easy it is for us to overlook important things, and even those that are obvious. Now, there are many reasons why we overlook obvious things, but since our time this morning is short, I want to focus on just one. And that's what the late, great Harvard psychologist William James called the blinding effect of habit. Now, to one degree or another, we're all creatures of habit. We go to sleep on the same side of the bed each night. We wake up at the same time each morning. We drive the same route to work each day and come home the same way each night, all because of habit. And we do this because habit has a tremendous upside. It not only saves us time, it saves us mental effort. We don't have to think about things. It frees us up to do all those other things and think about all those other important things in life that we have to do. But it also has a downside. And the downside is habit can blind us to solutions, even ones that, at least in retrospect, seem simple and obvious. Now, again, there are many reasons for this, but one of these reasons why we do this is that we're hypothesis-driven. We're a little bit like the policeman who starts his investigation with a suspect already in mind. And this bias, this preconception, determines how we'll end up. And what we do is we end up imposing a mental template of sorts between us and the world around us. And as a result, our perception will go in a predetermined direction. Now, one way that I can demonstrate this to you is to show you the 9-dot puzzle. If you want to play along, if you've got a piece of paper and a pencil with you somewhere in the audience, go ahead and draw 9 dots like so, if you can. And then the trick is, without lifting the pencil from the paper I want you to try to connect all the dots using 4 lines. I see everybody digging in their purses. Go ahead. Take your time. I see somebody's already got an idea there. Go ahead and see if you can do this. I want to stall for a little bit and give you time. But I warn you, just because something is simple does not mean that it's easy. And in fact, as maybe some of you are now finding out, it's incredibly difficult to do this puzzle. In fact, the studies have shown that the odds of an ordinary person doing this are next to 0. How many of you have actually figured it out? Anybody get this? Some? Good. But what's crucial here is why most people don't get this, is that they don't have the insight. We tend to look at the problem and we think that the answer lies somewhere within the box formed by those dots. We literally think inside the box. That's the template our mind imposes on the problem, without ever realizing we've done it. And we fail to think outside that box. And that's why this problem is so very difficult to solve. Now, this of course raises a practical question for all of us, which is, how do you get people to think outside the box? Well, one approach to this problem was developed by Dr. Alan Snyder at the Center for the Mind at the University of Sydney in Sydney, Australia. And he had noted anecdotal evidence that people with brain lesions or other types of brain dysfunction were capable of having insights that weren't available to normal people like you and me. And he began to wonder if he could, in effect, mimic that dysfunction by inhibiting certain parts of the brain by implanting a small electrical charge in the brain. And the answer was yes, he could. As you can see, he gave us 33 people, 14 of them were able to solve the puzzle, which is probably about the number we had here this morning, I think. And on one hand, this may look like it's not very practical because, after all, we can't run around zapping the brains of our colleagues, although that would be tempting. But I think the lesson from this is extremely practical no matter what you do. And the lesson is that the answer was there all the time. The ability to solve the problem was there all the time. The people didn't need bigger brains, higher IQ, more education. In other words, they didn't need to be smarter. They were smart enough. All they needed to do, all the solution required, was that they see the problem in a new way. Now let me give you a practical example, a real-life example, where this approach has yielded tremendous results. This is one of the rarest animals in the world. It's a red-rumped striped rabbit, in case you're wondering. And there are only 2 known species in the whole world. One is found on a little island of Sumatra up in the upper left-hand corner there in brown. And one species lives there, and it's only been seen once since 1916. One confirmed sighting. And the other species is even rarer. It lives in the Annamite mountain range of Vietnam, between the border between Laos and Vietnam. And the only reason we know about it is because of a British biologist by the name of Rob Timmins. And in 1996, he happened to be in a market in Laos, a food market, where he found 3 of the rabbits, all of them unfortunately dead. But he recognized them as being different and sent the DNA back to be analyzed. And sure enough, he found that they were a new species on the face of the earth. Now, as you can imagine, this caused quite a stir among zoologists. It's not every day that a new mammal is discovered. And so they wanted to know, well, is it still alive? And where does it live? Now, the conventional approach to figuring this out is, well, if you want to look for a rabbit, what do? You look for a rabbit, right? And that's exactly what they did. They put surveillance cameras in the rainforest of Vietnam, and they waited. And they waited, and they waited. In all, they waited 2,000 days and 2,000 nights, a little bit over 5 long years. and not once did the cameras capture a picture of the Annamite striped rabbit. Now, a reasonable person at this point might conclude that the 3 rabbits that Rob Timmons saw on the market that day were the last of these rabbits to hop around on the face of the earth. But half a world away, in Denmark of all places, a group of researchers had an insight, a 9-dot moment, if you will. And they said, hey, if you want to look for rabbits, don't look for rabbits. Look instead for leeches. Why leeches? Well, leeches enjoy a number of advantages. Number one, there's lots of them, especially in places like Vietnam. Number two, they go places you can't. And number three, and best of all, they suck blood. And the blood they suck contains the DNA of whatever it is they've been sucking. And in separate experiments, they had determined that this DNA stays inside for up to 4 months. So in theory, if you could get a leech and sample his blood, and you found something, you could see if that something has been alive within the last 4 months. So to test their theory, they went off to the jungles of Vietnam, and they began looking for leeches. And when they got 25 of the leeches, they started to sample their blood for DNA. And inside, they found a veritable menagerie of some of the world's exotic and rarely seen animals. They found this guy, for instance, small-toothed ferret badger, rarely seen. Other leeches had feasted on this animal, the goat antelope, also rarely seen. And inside, for the leeches, they found the DNA of this guy, which is, you guessed it, the Annamite striped rabbit. Now, the researchers, being good and cautious scientists, were quick to point out that what they had demonstrated, what their experiment had demonstrated, was proof of concept and not necessarily proof of rabbit. But I think they demonstrated proof of one other thing: the tremendous results you can achieve if you're willing to look at a problem in a new way. As Henry David Thoreau said a long time ago, it's not what you look at that matters, it's what you see. And this morning, I hope you've seen something interesting. Thank you very much, and have a wonderful morning.